Us now is President Trump's attorney, Rudy Giuliani. Mr. Mayor, thanks for being here.
Thank you.
Okay, so the president's most recent tweet about Robert Mueller says this, and it got our attention. Is Robert Mueller ever going to release his conflicts of interest with respect to President Trump, including the fact that we had a very nasty and contentious business relationship? What's he referring to?
He's referring to a dispute, which I imagine Mueller, I imagine he disclosed it to Rosenstein when he appointed him, because it would involve something that actually wasn't settled even to this day.
What is
it? That's up to the president and Mueller to describe. It's not part of my legal representation.
But hold on a second, Mr. Mayor. He's putting it out to the world in a tweet. Can we get some facts about it?
Sure, he'll give facts. But he has to do it. I'm not going to do it. I mean, look, this is what they did to him, right? Cohen put out the tape with him. His lawyer, Cohen, put out a tape with him, just gave his description of it, and it went viral. New York Times printed it.
And you don't like that.
And they didn't give any of the details.
Right.
Well, let them give the rest of the details.
No, let President Trump give the details. What does he mean? This is quite attention-grabbing. What contentious business relationship?
It's good that it's attention-grabbing.
Yeah, but it's not good in terms of the facts. Because
when you're getting beaten up by all kinds of anonymous tweets, you know, coming from Lanny Davis and Cohen, and the press is actually, for the first time, actually acknowledging that you're not doing it, and you put out something like that, you have every right to say, okay, you explain it, Mueller. Stand up and be a man.
Wait a minute. This doesn't make sense. How can the president make this claim and not support it?
He doesn't have to.
Why is it up to Robert Mueller to have to support the president's tweet?
Because he has the conflict, not the president.
What's the conflict?
I can't tell you. I'm not sure I know exactly what the conflict is. I have a good idea what it is. It's one that would have kept me out of the investigation.
What does that mean?
What it means is that I would have had a personal interest, a personal dispute with the President of the United States before the investigation that really precluded me from being. Maybe it explains why he hired 13 Democrats, why he hired a guy who donated $36,000.
These guys also donated to Republicans,
no, they didn't.
Right?
No way.
Yes.
A $2,000 contribution.
There's all sorts of contributions.
There's not all sorts of
Republicans and
that
Democrats.
That is totally wrong.
Mueller hasn't contributed.
Mueller hasn't contributed to a Republican. He worked for Obama and he worked for Republicans. We have a $36,000 guy. I don't know any prosecutor that donated $36,000 to parties. I wouldn't have him on a
You're saying that Mueller worked for Republicans and Democrats, yes?
Yeah, but he hired a completely biased staff. He hired a guy who is probably the most unethical Justice Department prosecutor, Andrew Weissman. You know who Andrew Weissman is. He's a complete scoundrel.
Hold on a second. Are you saying
that
the conflict of business...
Just go back.
Hold on one second. I don't want to get too distracted.
Explaining that Weissman was unethical.
1 second.
Well, people should know this.
Are you saying, well, look, I think people would like to know the facts, and that's what I'm trying to get to. Are you saying that the business conflict that Mueller and President Trump had, is that about his golf course?
I'm not going to go any further. You're not going to...
Is that what you think?
It is up to the president to describe it in further detail if he elects to do so. Or if Mueller would like to come out and explain why it's not a conflict, I invite Bob to do it.
Why didn't the president...
We waived... Let me finish. We waived the privilege when the whole thing came out because we're anxious to have you get the truth. So let's see if Mueller has that same impulse.
Well, again, it's President Trump that brought it up. I think it's incumbent upon President Trump to explain what he's talking about.
It's Mueller who possibly hasn't disclosed the conflict.
Why didn't President Trump bring this up 14 months ago when Mueller was appointed?
Because I think he was hoping that maybe it had passed Mueller by. Maybe he had gotten over it. But it's quite obvious with the extent of it. They haven't gotten back to us in 10 days over our recommendation of how to do an interview. I am sure they're in bad faith about an interview at this point. They have gone
What does that mean? Hold on. How do you know they're in bad faith? Tell me why.
Because they don't get back to us.
So you've reached out and you gave...
We wrote to them.
You wrote to them.
Reach out.
And you gave your list of the things, of your conditions.
Correct.
And
we've done that several times, and they were very, very forthcoming, very willing to talk about it. Then when you get to the point of making a decision, they go off and do something. And then something happens. Cohen gets raided. The Horowitz report comes out and blasts the origin of the investigation. The Strzok report comes out and shows a guy who's off the wall, who ran the original investigation, who hates Trump, who claims he's not biased, but he hates him. And now we've got Cohen, and we got 183 hours of tape. You've only heard 3 hours of them.
And I do want to get to Cohen in a second, but I have...
I'm sorry, I made a mistake. Not 183 hours of tape. Some are very short. We have 183 unique tape recordings.
Got it.
Only one with the President of the United States.
Only one of those, you're saying, is where the president's voice...
Sounds suspicious, doesn't it?
No, hold on a second. Only one of those is the president's voice on it.
The only one that has the president on it.
Only one.
Oh, excuse me. There are about 8 interruptions, like Michael, I'll see you at 2, or Mr. Trump, I'll see you at 4, or we'll have coffee. There are about 8 of those.
Okay. I will get to Cohen in a second, but a couple more things with Mueller. Are you still having negotiations with his team about the president sitting down?
Not yet.
Those are done.
Well, I mean, I don't know what will happen after the latest statement by the president, and we haven't heard anything. I don't know why. I mean, they can write a report without him. They do not need President Trump's. They have 2 aspects to this, right? Collusion. They have his side of the story. Even this Russian meeting, I'm happy to tell him he wasn't there. He wasn't at the meeting. Cohen is not telling the truth.
How do you know the president didn't know?
Because I'll tell you why I know. Because Cohen, always goes too far, and when you're lying, there's always a trap for you. So he said there was a one-on-one meeting that Donald Jr. came in and told him about the meeting was about to take place. Well, there are 2 witnesses to say it didn't happen.
The president and his son.
All right, and the biggest.
They have a self-interest in saying.
And Cohen has a much bigger self-interest in saying the opposite in order to get himself favor with Mueller. Also, in all these months, in all these tapes, he's never said it. And all of a sudden it appears now when he's maybe going to go to jail and he's singing for his supper. Hey, come on.
But
now, let's go even further. 2 days before that, he claims there's a big meeting with about 5 people. He was in that meeting. I've only been able to talk to 3 of the 5 people in that meeting. 3 of the 5 tell me it didn't take place. All of them, I think, have been under oath on it. And the other 2 couldn't possibly have been reveal it because Mueller never asked us about it.
Okay. Again, I do want to get to Cohen in a second. And I know you're very excited to talk about it. We are being aimed at by a,
luckily, not a very artful liar, but a liar.
Okay, we're going to get to that. One more thing about Mueller. When's the last time you talked to the Mueller team?
Me or my co-counsel?
The team.
Oh, we talked to them probably 10 days ago. Oh, no, I'm sorry. Jane made a few calls over last week to see if we can get an answer.
Why would you want to allow your client, the president, to sit down with somebody who...
Good question.
Are you saying that the Mueller investigation is not legitimate?
Yes.
Okay, you do not believe it's legitimate?
Correct.
Why would you let your client sit down with that person?
Well, maybe we have differing opinions within our group. We have, after all, 5 very, very good lawyers. And we don't have 5 different opinions, but we have a split of opinion.
And some of them believe it is
legitimate. And also, we have a client, which you always have to consider, who's the president of the United States, who wants to be heard.
Why would the president want to sit down with someone he has criticized?
Well, maybe Mueller has allowed so many improper things to happen. He has so many prejudiced people with him that the president may change his mind. We haven't tested that.
But why? But the president, if the president feels this strongly, why are you still negotiating a sit down?
He doesn't feel that strongly. He has felt strongly about, on some subject, being willing to testify.
And is that over?
I don't know. We haven't talked about that yet. But I think it should be, but he's the client, not me.
You think the president still might have an interest in sitting down with Robert Mueller, who he has criticized via Twitter and elsewhere?
What I think and what I know may be 2 different things. I think he shouldn't. I know how convinced he is that he didn't do anything wrong and wants to explain it. And I've seen other people get into trouble thinking that. Innocent people.
Bob Mueller. He's...
I thought we were talking about Cohen.
Not yet.
Oh.
Bob Mueller, decorated Vietnam War vet, FBI director, highly respected among Congress, among Republicans, among Democrats. I think that you respected him.
I know him for a long, long time.
Do you still respect him?
We'll see. We'll see what happens. I'd like to see him come forward.
Do you respect Bob Mueller?
I guess the judgment's out. I mean,
you don't know if you respect this man anymore, who has all of these credentials that I just read.
I don't respect credentials. I respect performance. I see a guy who's conducting an investigation, particularly the Russian collusion part, that is by now obvious. You only can investigate an innocent man so long. See, if the guy didn't commit the bank robbery and you think he did, and you keep investigating him, you're going to do it forever because you're going to keep coming up with Cohens and Horowitzes.
I understand, and we have due process. I understand all of that, but the investigation isn't done yet. I mean, you know how long these things take.
Yes, it is. Of course it's done. If they're looking at his tweets, the investigation is done. If they are, we're going to do obstruction by tweet on a president of the United States as an article of impeachment. Go read the law review articles about that. It's laughable. It's scary.
Paul Manafort's trial is starting tomorrow.
Right. And he has no information incriminating of the president. I know that for a fact. They can squeeze him. Paul Manafort does not know anything, and nor could it be possible he did. He was with him for 4 months. I was there when Paul Manafort was there. Paul Manafort was a brilliant gatherer of delegates.
Gatherer of delegates. He was the chairman of the
he was, but
campaign.
he really wasn't Jared and the Sons and Bossie and these other people were really running it.
So,
but okay.
So,
but Paul is a.
But you're saying that Paul Manafort did not have any power in the campaign?
I'm not saying that. I said he had a very discreet, important area. What I'm saying is he was never involved in intimate business relationships with Donald Trump. I mean, that's just 4 months. They're not going to be colluding about Russians, which I'm not even know if that's a crime, colluding about Russians.
Okay.
You start analyzing the crime. The hacking is the crime. The hacking is the crime.
That certainly is the original
Well, the
crime.
president didn't hack.
Of course not. That's the original.
He didn't pay them for hacking.
And as you know, it has led other places. The meeting with the Russians.
If you got the hacked information from the Russians here at CNN and you played it, would you be in jeopardy of going to jail? Of course not.
The meeting with the Russians, how can you be sure that the president didn't know beforehand? You're saying it's just a he said, he said.
Nobody can be sure of anything. In a situation like this, you have two things that argue against Cohen. It's 2 on 1. I'm sorry, 3 things. Then you get to the other meeting he says he was at that the president wasn't at. It's 3 or 4 on 1. That's the two. He also has added, or Lanny Davis has added, that there was a meeting 2 days before the meeting took place with Donald Jr., Jared, Manafort, and 2 others, Gates, and 1 more person.
And that's a real meeting. You're saying that's
a real meeting on another provable subject in which he would not participate.
The meeting, just so I'm clear, the meeting with the Russians, who was in there?
I'd have to. Jared.
Yep.
It was with Donald Jr.,
yep.
Jared, and 2 to 3 other people. I'm not sure of exactly who.
But
the one who came in and
Russia.
allegedly told the president about it was Donald, which Donald denies, the president denies, and there's no corroboration of. And Cohen has never said this at any time up until now.
When Don Jr. made, as you know, that day before the meeting, and I think after, calls to a blocked number, was that the president?
I don't know. I haven't said. And this meeting that Cohen's talking about took place before the meeting with the Russians. But the other thing that's contradicted is Cohen also now says, because he says too much, that 2 days before he would participate in a meeting with roughly the same group of people, but not the president, definitely not the president, in which they were talking about the strategy of the meeting with the Russians. The people in that meeting deny it. The people we've been able to interview. The people we have not been able to interview have never said that about that meeting.
Okay. Here's my larger issue. What's in it for Michael Cohen to say that the president knew about that meeting? Why is he lying about that?
You've got to be kidding me.
No, how does that help?
You have to be kidding me.
How does that help?
He's the big fish. You don't give up. What is Cohen going to do? Give up a couple of taxi cab drivers? That's going to get him out of jail? I mean, this is the big fish. The reason I got Manafort in solitary confinement is so that he'll give up Donald Trump, not because he'll give up some Russian or Ukrainian he did business with. This is what Judge Ellis said about Mueller, your hero there, Mueller's investigation. Mueller is investigating Manafort, taking a case they had passed on, resurrecting it, and trying to make it the crime of the century in order to squeeze him to testify. You know how easy it would be for Manafort to get out of it if he was a liar? Just say, oh, I brought 2 Russians in to see him, and there's no corroboration. What Cohen has done to himself, and what Lanny Davis, to his discredit, has done to him, is ruin his credibility before he shows up at the prosecutor's door. Do you think anybody in the Southern District of New York is going to put Cohen on the witness stand ever?
Well, look, I mean, here we go. You had said not 2 months ago that Michael Cohen was an honest and honorable man. Now you're saying he's a pathological liar for life. Which one is it?
Well, that's about as unfair a thing as you can say. How did I know that he was a lawyer taping his client? You tell me a lawyer is taping his client, I got to say, sorry, I made a mistake. The guy is unethical. He's a scumbag. He's a horrible person. I've never heard of a lawyer taping his client without the client's consent. I never heard of a person like Cohen doing what he did to Chris Cuomo, coming into his office in this building, taking out his phone, putting it away, and saying, I'm not recording you, and then recording him for 2 hours.
That was an off-the-record conversation, so we don't comment on that.
Well, you don't have to comment. I have the transcript of it on the tape.
I'm saying we don't.
And, by the way, he didn't put out the first part of that tape. I had to go find the first part of that tape. He also cut off the last part of the tape with Trump, which our expert says is doctored.
Yes.
You got a really bad guy you're dealing with.
You spelled out a lot of stuff here.
I know. It's overwhelming.
Mr. Mayor, let me just play for you the things that you have said about Michael Cohen who you are now going after in no uncertain terms. So let me just get
You mean before I knew he was taping his client?
Yes.
Surreptitiously telling other people?
Correct.
And lying?
Correct. Listen to this.
The man is an honest, honorable lawyer. Michael's not going to lie. He's going to tell the truth. The man is a pathological manipulator, liar.
Okay, so which one is it?
So that, George Washington would have said that about Benedict Arnold at a certain point in time. So
Yes,
what the heck are you picking on me for saying he was an honest, honorable man when I didn't know he tape recorded conversations of his clients? He was shaking people down for money. He was lying about things on a tape. He was manipulating or doctoring tapes. I didn't know any of that when I said that. Like George Washington didn't know that Benedict Arnold was a traitor.
Yes. Now what you
And
are
therefore
saying
was a man of no
is
character.
that he's a lifelong liar. How do you know he's a lifelong
Because
liar?
because I see 183 unique tapes, 11 in substance, in which I see him fooling, lying, deceiving everyone that he talked to.
Over
All
the
those
course
people
of
are
what
on
time?
tape. Yeah,
What these tapes cover what time frame?
probably 16 to 17.
And who else is
Maybe
on
18,
these
a little
tapes?
18.
Who else do you hear
In
him
each
interacting
case, it's a
with?
third party, one with the press, then mostly in our tapes, reporters. In a couple of cases, they're people that are business people, but not people that they're mostly reporters.
Mm-hmm. And the fact that
And none of them knew they were being recorded. None.
the fact that President Trump, for more than 10 years, worked closely with
some executives.
this fixer, this close confidant, who you now say is a pathological liar and lifelong liar, what does that say about the president's judgment?
Said he turned out to have a close friend betray him, like Iago betrayed Otello, and Brutus put the last knife into Caesar. I think they both trusted those people. It happens in life, Allison, that you get double cross. I'm not going to mention them. I've had people that I work with under tremendous stress, remarkable people who've turned out to be terrible, disloyal, and dishonest.
It seems like what happened was that Michael Cohen, after he got in trouble, after he was raided by the FBI, and as you know, the Southern District of New York is now looking into some of his business dealings. It seems like he was sending out some clues or sending up some flares and looking for some reinforcement or reassurance from his longtime boss, President Trump. And President Trump didn't do that. It seems like what would really help Michael Cohen is a pardon. Would President Trump now ever pardon Michael Cohen?
I can't tell you whether he would pardon him, and obviously he shouldn't pardon anybody during the investigation. I can't take away from the president, nor would I, the discretion to pardon anyone.
But would you think it's still a possibility, given all
nor
of
can I
this
really
war of
speculate on
words?
it. It would be so unfair. First of all, I have said this a couple of times. Nobody should proceed on the assumption that President Trump's going to pardon them. Nobody. They should make the decisions about their lives based on the fact that they got to deal with whatever the government is offering them or not offering them, or how honest or dishonest they want to be. Now, on the other hand, if the president believes that an unjust situation happened, of course, like any other president, he'll pardon.
But given that you now say that he's a pathological liar and lifelong liar, can you say unequivocally the president will never pardon him?
I cannot say that. I can't take away the president. If I said it, it wouldn't matter.
Right, but why would the president pardon a
I don't
pathological
know why
liar?
he would. I mean, you ask me, I wouldn't pardon him. If he did that to me.
You suggested that this is really about Michael Cohen being in trouble with his taxi cab.
No, I don't know. A very unusual subpoena was obtained. So there's got to be an affidavit for that subpoena. In that affidavit, they list a number of crimes, or even in the warrant itself, they list a number of possible crimes, none of which would have to do with us. Bank fraud, that relate to the taxi cabs. I don't know what kind of evidence they have of that. Mm-hmm. Judging by Cohen's reaction, I assume he believes he's in trouble. He's not in trouble because of us, because they can't prove any of these things. So it has to be these other things. Also, we see all this material, but we can't touch it. We figure there's something in there. But this is all guesswork.
You're talking about the Michael Cohen having taped the president, and where they are talking about setting up an LLC to pay hush money to a Playboy model who has alleged an affair with the president.
Yes.
Okay. And you say that the
Sort
tape.
of. I mean, she had already been paid. AMI had the rights, and they were setting up a corporation to buy the rights back from AMI. That's correct.
Right. All of this, hush money to a Playboy model, allegations of marital affair, setting up an LLC, buying the rights from a tabloid. Isn't all of this unbecoming for a president of the United States?
I don't know. You don't investigate a president for unbecoming conduct.
No, but
Otherwise, I mean,
all of this
I don't want to
stuff.
bring up other presidents, but
I mean, but you're going after
Allison,
Michael Cohen and denigrating his
I'm not
character.
going after him.
But this is all the stuff that we're talking about, the overarching issues of all
I'm not
this other
denigrating
dirty stuff.
I am not denigrating Michael Cohen's character. I've practiced
calling
law.
him a pathological liar.
I've practiced law for a long time. If you tape record your client and you lie to your client about it, you have no character. You forfeited your character. You forfeited your law license, as far as I'm concerned.
Well, as far as you're concerned,
would you retain a lawyer who secretly recorded you and lied to you about it?
Look, there's a lot of things in this scenario that I wouldn't do, but what's the law on the books that a lawyer can't record his client? Where's that law?
It's called the attorney-client privilege. It's not a law. It's an ethical rule, and you're subject
But
to
it's not really for disbarment. I mean, you can record your client. Where's the rule?
Without permission from your client? You can't record your client without permission of your client. It's outrageous. Go find me an ethics professor that wants to keep their job that's going to tell you that, Allison. That's absurd.
Why did you waive the attorney-client privilege for the Cohen tapes?
Because I know the whole tape, and I could bring out parts of the tape. For example, if I didn't waive it, I wouldn't be able to tell you that he cuts it off abruptly, which he does. Right after the word check, it ends. Next thing you hear is Don Jr.
What's your theory about that? Since we've already heard that there has been a conversation about payment to keep quiet this story about the Playboy model and the affair. So what else is there? What do you think? In other words, I guess my point is we've already heard the juicy stuff. So you say it cuts off abruptly, and you think that's a smoking gun. We've already heard the juicy stuff.
I don't know that it's a smoking gun. I just know that you don't do that with a tape and expect that it's going to be admitted into evidence.
But that's not doctored. That's a tape recorder turning off.
I think it's unlikely that he turned it off during the conversation, and so does the expert. Think about it this way. If I were surreptitiously recording your conversation, and Trump didn't know it, Cuomo didn't know it, I'd have to go in like this and put it off at just the right time? Unlikely. More likely is he came back home, he erased the portion that he wanted erased, and then he tried to tape record a conversation. It appears with Don Jr. He might have gotten that too, and then he erased that.
Well, you've spoken to Donald Trump. What's the part that was erased?
I have no idea.
Does Donald Trump remember?
No. How does he? I'm going to tell him you had a conversation with. I don't think we have a date for that. You had a conversation with him. He was taping. You didn't know it.
Yeah, I would think this would be a memorable one.
Oh, really? In the middle of a
story of a Playboy model.
Come on, be fair. They weren't talking about the Playboy model. Nobody talked to Donald Jr. about the Playboy model.
This is what the whole conversation was about.
No, it was not.
Paying the $150,000 to buy the rights for her story.
You are confusing this to a fairly well. The second conversation is clearly about another subject. It may not even.
Conversation?
On the tape.
Yeah.
He ends the conversation with the word check from the president. Check.
For the hush money?
Let me finish. Then, about 3 seconds later, you hear him say Don Jr. He might not even be talking to Don Jr. He may be saying Don Jr. is going to come here. Don Jr. isn't going to come here.
Yes, so
we don't know that.
What does any of that have to do with the hush money for the Playboy
tapes.
model?
He was doctoring tapes. He doctored at the word check, he cut the tape off.
Mm-hmm.
That's called doctoring a tape.
Or maybe the tape turned off. Maybe the tape recorder turned off.
Right. It just turned off. And then it turned back on.
No, that's where it ends.
It does not end on the word. They at least said goodbye. I mean, it did not end on the word check. This is getting to be a silly conversation.
It is getting to be a silly conversation. So let's talk about the larger issue. When you were a prosecutor in the Southern District of New York, if the subject of an investigation were loudly criticizing the investigation, were tweeting about it, was calling witnesses names, would you think that the subject of that investigation was getting a little bit nervous about the investigation?
No, I would think it was an innocent man who maybe was tired of the fact he's been investigated to the tune of about $30 or $40 million, had a couple of lives ruined that shouldn't be ruined, and is innocent, hasn't done anything wrong.
As a former
the man happens to be a man that doesn't take attacks on him lightly, as he shouldn't. It's his reputation. And he's the President of the United States. This is interfering with the ability to govern. It's a horrible thing that Mueller is doing.
Why? How much time is President Trump spending on this? Why can't he govern while this is happening?
You don't think it, I mean, you know how often I've had to interrupt him, and I try not to, and he's very good about it. But all during the time we've been going through this, we've been dealing with Iran, North Korea, China, trade, taxes.
Yes. And why can't he go about his business and wait for Robert Mueller's investigation to wrap up?
Because every day something new is tweeted that's unfair, untrue. You stop the news on CNN and say, Cohen has a damaging tape about the President of the United States.
A lot of that is because President Trump is tweeting it. He's starting the news cycle by tweeting these
President
things
Trump
about
didn't tweet that Cohen had a tape about this Stormy Daniels or the
yes, I agree in that case, but a lot of this is driven by President Trump.
A lot of almost all of these things
on North Korea or whatever else, tariffs.
Almost all of these things are in response. Almost all of them are in response.
Hold that thought, Mr. Mayor.
No, I'm going to leave after this one.
We've scared you away?
Oh, yeah, you scared me away. I look really scared. No, it's starting to get useless.
No.
This conversation is getting really, really, really petty and silly.
Remember when you said that you would stay all day to talk about this?
Okay, I'll stay one more time, but you got to get me some coffee.
Okay, got it. President Trump's attorney, Rudy Giuliani. As you sit here today, Mr. Mayor, will the president ever sit down for an interview? Do you believe the president will ever sit down for an interview with Robert Mueller's investigators?
Well, we sort of went through that.
I know. I'm just wondering. For
I
the
guess
headline,
you have to put. You want to put odds on it? I
Yes.
think the odds are against it, but not. I wouldn't be shocked because he wants to do it so badly. And on the negotiations about this, when they respond, they've been very reasonable. It's not. But then they don't respond. Then they just. Now it could be the Manafort trial is coming up, and they're
busy.
Yeah, it could be. It could be.
So when's the last? So
they're not that big a staff.
You're saying that where we are now is that you last made an overture to them with your conditions. Can you share with us?
I can't.
You cannot share.
I think
what your
they'd be
conditions
upset
were.
if we did that.
Okay.
Yeah, and they should be.
But you said what the president
people-
would be willing to sit down.
You can sort of figure out that it's
condition.
in the area of collusion, not obstruction, and.
Meaning he would answer questions about collusion, not obstruction, or vice versa?
No, collusion, not obstruction. Obstruction, we believe, a legal defense to under Article 2 of the Constitution, and also under some of the cases that say they have to demonstrate they can't get the information any other way, and they've gotten it another way. Him tweeting, him talking.
Okay, so just so in layman's terms, so I understand, you're saying that one of your conditions is that he will not answer questions about obstruction of justice.
It is not, yes, but maybe if they could show us one or two there, we would consider.
One or two what?
One or two questions that they really need.
You would consider it?
We would consider.
Okay, fair enough.
Our real concern about that is that they're going to set up a perjury trap. So the president says, the Flynn conversation, the president says that conversation didn't take place. Comey said it took place. If it took place, I could live with that. You could say that the president wasn't obstructing, just saying, be good to him, go easy on him. I had that happen a lot of times as a prosecutor. It shouldn't obstruct an investigation, and it didn't. However, the president didn't say it, and it's far easier to charge perjury than it is to go through that very contorted obstruction argument.
So how many days ago was it that you submitted your conditions?
10.
And you've not heard anything back from their team?
And I think Jane has pestered them a few times.
Okay. And at what point will you just make a final decision? This feels like it's been going on for a long time, these negotiations.
Yeah, we're mindful of the fact that we'd like to get this over with by September. I do believe that Mueller does too. He said something in our meeting with him, the last meeting we had with him, where he thought that September was the date to get their report in. It makes sense. It's not well before, but enough before the November election, so you can't say he interfered with it one way or the other.
It's your impression from having spoken to the team that they want to wrap it up by September. Not just your desire.
Only impression I got that from is Mueller himself.
Mueller told you that.
Well, he said, we talked about, part of the negotiation is also timing. If we get an interview, we want to know that a report's going to come out within a fairly short period of time. We're not all sitting around, biting our nails, and a lot of speculation goes on. And they have said that at that point, they had thought that early September would be a good guideline. I may have read into that that's also a good time so you don't get accused of doing a Comey and getting involved in the election.
If he does not wrap it up by September, are you worried this will affect the midterms?
Yeah, I don't know which way. I mean, yeah, the people against him get excited about it, but it's one of his biggest rallying cries. You know, don't impeach. Vote Republican because they'll impeach. I think it sure as hell confuses the midterm, and it could go off on a ridiculous thing about impeachment. We don't want I don't know, maybe you do. You don't want the American, I don't think you want the American people voting on impeachment. I think we want them voting on taxes, Russia, China, North Korea, their lives.
As you sit here today, despite all of the stuff that the president has said about how he doesn't think that Mueller can be trusted, basically, and doesn't think it's legitimate, you still believe that if today they came back to you and agreed to your conditions, the president would sit down with Robert Mueller?
You know, yes, I do believe that. I probably have to go through those conditions one more time to make sure that some of the events of the last week and a half, Cohen events, haven't affected it. But here's the good news on that score. They're not involved right now with Cohen, as far as I know. They have not taken up his offer, which has been made publicly.
Why wouldn't they take up his offer? He knows.
Well, I had dinner last night with two very superb former prosecutors, and they said they turned down people when they were seeking too much publicity, because they felt inherently it would prejudice their investigation. If they think they have a pretty good case for a report, and they include Cohen in it, and we can rip Cohen's credibility, it can undermine their entire report. Remember, we're not going to go to trial. We're going to go to a report. You're going to end up, I'll be here with my version of the report, and they'll have their version of the report. And the American people, in that sense, are going to decide it. Well, if you think you got a pretty good case, maybe you don't want Cohen's baggage. Now, the Southern District is different. Southern District may want to prosecute other people. And then they got to worry about his baggage. And I think everyone knows the Southern District is not happy about lots of publicity. That's why I try to be very careful not to put out tapes, but just respond to what they say.
Rudy Giuliani.
Thank you. We'll be back.
We appreciate you being here. We appreciate all the time. Thanks so much. I hope you liked the coffee.
I did. It was worth it.